Hi, how you doing? Do you notice it's a little bit emptier in here? All the annual flowers I got outside today, starting to harden them off so I could finally get them planted. I shouldn't say finally because today is the 22nd of May, and that's really not that late. That's not late at all, actually. This is starting to get into prime planting season for zone 3. I'm going to get out there and I'm going to seed some green beans, bush beans, as well as the carrots. Also, tonight's low is supposed to be 3. That's still pretty cold, but on the south side of the house, I thought that I could probably plant in the Dusty Miller. They have been living pretty much outside. They can handle 3 degrees on the south side of the house. My name is Sharon. I garden on a large yard in a small town in east central Saskatchewan, Zone 3. Welcome to my Sask Garden. We finally got over those few days of wet and cold weather, and when I say wet, it wasn't enough rain to make a difference, and it wasn't cold enough to come down as snow, but darn near. And so today has warmed up. The going forward looks very promising, and so I've started hardening off the flowers so that I can get them planted out. I've still not started hardening off the tomatoes and the peppers behind me. They are still living the good life in here and probably will be until I plant out all the flowers, and then I will start hardening off these things and get them planted out later. I'm not in a big rush. I actually transplanted the peppers into bigger pots so that they could spend more time in here. The tomatoes, on the other hand, do need to be transplanted into larger pots or get planted out, but I'm kind of hoping tomatoes are a little bit more resilient and maybe I can get them out just a wee bit earlier. So the bush beans I'm going to plant, they're called Provider, and I've planted these before. These are actually seeds from last year. I used to grow Blue Lake bush beans, and I also grew Blue Lake pole beans, which I really liked for the first couple years. This is the pole beans that I first noticed this phenomenon. I don't know what to call it, but they started producing these flat, inedible beans. That's all I can call them. They were tough. It's not like they were old. They just came out. They just started to grow like that, really flat, really tough, quite big, and they weren't any good. And the next year I planted pole beans again, same seed probably, but in a different spot, and they did it. And they did that again and even more. Of that was these flat, kind of hard beans that were no good. Then I started to notice it on the bush Blue Lake. Same thing, and the odd vine on the Blue Lake would come out as like it wanted to be a pole bean vine, and those vines were producing those hard, tough, flat beans. And so I quit growing bush Blue Lake entirely, and I went to these Provider beans, and they've not done that. So there's something wonky with the bush Blue Lake. However, I now see that there is seed available for bush Blue Lake improved. Maybe they took away that problem, whatever was going on. I don't know what it was, but I only plant a little bit of beans. I don't plant very much. And then when you get a whole bunch of these that are basically inedible, it's kind of frustrating. I have no problem with the Provider. I have no reason to switch back to the bush Blue Lake. It's not like they were, particularly better than the Provider, so I'm going to continue on with these. I was reading on here to make sure that all was good. It says that it's soil temperature of 18 to 26 C, and I took the temperature of my soil just a few minutes ago where I'm going to plant it at about the depth I'm going to plant these, and the soil temperature is 21. Perfect. Of course, that soil temperature is going to go down at night, especially tonight. It's going to be 3 degrees, so it'll probably cool off, but I am going to put row cover over top of that seeded row of that bed until they actually germinate. So that might help a little bit. I think tonight. Probably won't be such a big deal. They're basically taking in moisture and starting to swell. Speaking of that, it specifically says on here, first of all, it says beans need warm soil and do not soak your seeds before planting. So I've never have. I've only just, made sure that they stayed moist. From the time I put them in the ground, I do not let them dry out. They usually germinate, within a week. And if the temperatures are a little warmer, they may germinate a little sooner with that kind of treatment. I'm also going to seed carrots today, and I'm seeding two kinds. One is called Brava Hybrid. It says it's a burlap cucumber, large, early maturing, 65 days. And it likes a soil temperature of 16 to 25 C. So my 21 C soil is going to be quite good. I have a second kind called Yaya Hybrid Organic. I don't think it says anything specific on here. It says it's a improved nantes for summer heat, 7 to 8 inch roots with good flavor and texture. And yeah, we'll get going on that. So here's where those beans are going to go. I originally thought that I would plant 2 rows of beans and 2 rows of carrots here, but I've changed my mind just recently, and I'm going to plant the carrots over by the tomatoes instead. Today I'm going to plant 1 row of beans. I've already prepared the soil here. And then in about a month's time, I'm going to plant another row of beans just over here on the other edge. And in the middle, I'm going to plant the peppers. I think that'll give the peppers more room than planting them with the tomatoes this year. So I just did a hand till with this soil, and then I raked it level, and then I just made a small furrow in here. And so now it's really just a matter of putting in the bean seeds, probably about 1 inch apart, and covering them up and giving them a water. So here's the beans. They just look like beans, dried beans. Nothing special here. And so, you could go fast and then thin if you like, if they're spaced too close together. I tend to like to go just a little slower since I'm only doing 1 row, 1 12-foot row. It's not like it's a lot. The reason that I put in a row now and a row again at the end of June is because I don't process these in any way. I don't freeze or pickle or can or anything like that. We strictly like them for fresh eating. And by putting a second row in just a little later, gives you a longer period of time with fresh beans instead of too many all at once. Almost done. Takes like all of 2 minutes. And again, it's all about getting your soil prepared. And then it's easy peasy. This is probably going to be an excellent weekend in Saskatchewan. I think pretty much over the whole province, if I'm not mistaken, for getting the garden in. And don't think it's too late, because it's far from that. We're actually just getting into the best time to be planting a garden. So now I'm just going to give it just another little rake over top, just to kind of push that soil back where it needs to go. And then firm it in. And a little bit of water and we're good to go. The soil actually had nice moisture in it from those few millimeters of rain that we had over the last couple days. It's always good to water in though. So I want to cover this up now with frost blanket or this row cover, and I'm going to take this one because it's warmed up. Cabbage and broccoli are under here and they don't You know, they like growing cool. So I'm going to snag this one, move it over here, and then I'm going to put net on the cabbage instead of this row cover, which, you know, I find that the row cover, although it's very light, and it does allow air through, it is water permeable, so the rain gets through, but I still find that it warms the soil up just a little bit more than the netting does. And it's difficult to water through this. I will be setting up some drip eventually for this, but it is more difficult to water through this. And so, anyways, for all those reasons, I think that it's probably a good plan to take it off and put the net on instead. Ooh, lots of ants under there, wee baby ones. I don't want to get bit. I don't know. Do baby ants bite? When I was a child, I sat on a red ant hill, or I was playing in one or something. I actually have a little bit of memory of it. I was not very old. I'm going to say maybe I was 3 or 4, and of course I lived on a farm, and I was out playing. My sister and brother are older, and so they would have been in school. And so I was out playing, and I sat on an anthill, and what I remember is going back to the house or screaming to the house or something. I remember my mom taking me by the shoulders and shaking me quite like you would shake out a carpet. She shook me trying to get all those ants off of me. I don't know how many bites I had or how all that went after that. I know my mom told me the story several times, but so I'll leave them like this. You know, once they start to germinate, then I'll have to put the hoops on so that the growth isn't impeded. But this row cover does keep the soil nice and warm. This is a very fine netting. You could see it's also good for keeping out the majority of the flea beetles. They sometimes find a way in, darn things. Not necessarily through the netting, but up underneath the edge of it or something like that. I actually haven't really seen any this year, though. I have seen the odd white butterfly so far. And so, yeah, you can't go very long without some sort of cover of the cole crops or the cabbage crops or the brassicas in this part of the world, because we are most often surrounded by canola crops, and the flea beetles really like the canola crops, so they're attracted by that. And when there's no canola for them to go after, then they will attack every bit of broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, you name it. And they will attack as well. I found out last year they will also attack rock cress, Arabis. I bought one last year and it promptly got eaten up. I think this is actually the best solution to the problem. I've just ordered a new net that is going to be larger to accommodate the big hoops once the broccoli starts to grow. If my broccoli decides to get nice and tall this year, then I'm going to need a larger net. Last year I tried it with two nets, and I tried to pin them together at the top in the middle, and that just didn't work. So I just ordered one that's 13 feet wide. That's not easy to find, to be honest. These, I think these come as 8 feet, if I'm not mistaken. And then, you know, you can get as long as you want, but the width is what's hard to come by. Okay, that'll do for now. I think we'll get on to those carrots. So in this bed right here, I'm going to put the peppers and 2 rows of carrots right in front of them. So that is the north side of the bed. The peppers, of course, will grow taller than the carrots. And so I'm going to plant the carrots on the south side of them. I don't think, I know there's some, school of thought about companion planting. And of course, I think there's a book, Carrots Love Tomatoes, or Tomatoes Love Carrots, something like that. I don't think I've ever grown the two together. I can't say if it's yes or no, that it's better or worse. I'm not, of course, not interplanting them. They're just going to be in the same bed together. I don't think that matters. I think that when they talk about carrots love tomatoes, or the other way around, I don't know what it is. I think what they actually refer to is interplanting, and that the carrots benefit from the shade of the tomatoes. I don't usually pay attention to companion planting. The only thing I pay attention to is that I don't plant beans where garlic has been the year before. And that's about the only thing that I worry about, I guess, would be the best way to put it. So 2 rows of carrots, fairly close together. Just going to rake it level. I'm going to let this worm go over there. Couple more. Oh, I like to see those in the garden. Nice healthy soil. I keep notes from year to year, what I plant in the different beds every year. I tend to follow about a 3-year schedule where I don't plant the same thing or the same family of things in the same bed every year. This year will be a little bit different because I'm going to be planting the butternut squash where cucumber grew last year. But I only grow a couple cucumber on either end of a bed, and I'm probably not even going to plant the squash, in that same area, let's say. I didn't have any trouble with the cucumber last year. It's not like I had, a whole bunch of powdery mildew or anything like that. So pretty sure it'll be all right. Just had a beautiful crop of henbit the other day. I got under here and weeded it. It was amazing how well it grew underneath that frost blanket. It was just about to go into seed, I think. So I caught it in time. Oh, I guess I'll still need to make just tiny little rows. Carrots are not planted deep. So just small little furrows. It's quite pleasant when the sun comes out. It's actually a little bit warm when the sun comes out, but that makes sense. It is getting toward the end of May. So anyways, about the carrots. I'm going to start with the organic carrots. And I like to use sand. And I started this process about maybe 4 years ago. Before, I always had to thin the carrots. It always seemed like such a waste to me to have to get rid of the little baby carrots. I never really tried, replanting them. But then I read about using sand, and in this case, this is silica, and it's just really fine chicken grit. And I have that on hand because I use that as an additive sometimes. I just use the silica or the chicken grit as a soil additive for succulents. So my package says there's 300 to 350 seed, and I'm sure you've seen carrot seed. It's very small, very light, and this packet actually says that This seed may have a certified organic film coat to improve visibility and ease of seeding. It does look like they're coated with something. There's maybe like two or three handfuls of that silica or sand. And if you're going to use sand, you know, it should be dry sand. It should just be very dry. There's other ways to plant carrots. You could get a seed tape. You could make a seed tape. But, you know, carrot seed is hard to get it. To get that tiny little amount, you saw how much 350 seed was. It's a small amount. You have to sprinkle it as far as you want to sprinkle. And I don't know, for me, they always landed up being bunched up somewhere in the row. So I'm just gonna get you a little bit closer to the soil here just to see how I go about this. So here's my row right here. I know that's difficult to see, but that's where it is, quite shallow. And I've taken out about as many rocks as I can see in there. I made a little tag just so that I know which row is which, that's all. And I also marked it on the other end just with some stakes, just so that I know where they're supposed to be when I'm watching for germination. And so I simply go along like that. So I think I've probably got, and I'm going to continue to mix as I go because I can see some seed. I've probably got 3 handfuls or so. So I'm just going to try and space it as easily as I can all the way through the row. I'm going to stand up to do that. I guess it was more than 2 handfuls, but however much you have. And if you go this route, just try and space it as evenly as you can throughout the entire row. All right. And then we're going to just cover quite lightly. I have done other things here in the past, like I've put vermiculite or some peat moss. Peat moss cakes, I find. So I don't do that anymore. A little bit of vermiculite doesn't, I don't know that it really helps. You'd probably have to put it in the row for it to actually provide a little bit of extra moisture. And I'm not going to go with the rake. I'm just going to go lightly with my hand. And I'm going to use boards to cover the row, so I kind of do want to know where they are. Okay. And now we'll do the other row. I have more sand, or in this case silica. I always call it sand. And another tag. I think this is a little less sand than I had before. And same amount of seed. And these are the Brava hybrid seed. Nice looking carrots. It would be nice to get a crop like that. I was happy with my crop of carrots last year. These carrots, although it says it may have an approved film coating, I don't think it does. These look more just like regular carrot seed. So, mix it up good. You know, when you do this, it seems like I see more carrot seed when you do that, so And same idea. Always mix again just before you get a handful. I'll just lightly cover and pat it again. That's all you want, is just a covering. Now, it's important for carrot seed to stay moist, regardless of the temperature. And that's often a failure of a carrot crop, is that it starts to germinate and then it gets dry. The seed dries out and then it is no longer viable. So that's the important part. And that's where the boards come in really handy, because when you put those boards on top of the soil, it keeps that soil underneath moist. In addition, I'm going to put that row cover back on. That helps with warmth, but it also helps with stopping the wind from drying out the soil surface. These will be under a board, but it's not like a heavy board, so they just barely sit on top of the surface. They probably shade it more than anything, because sometimes they'll just warp a tiny bit, from the moisture. So in about a week's time, a week to 10 days, I've never actually had a problem with germinating this way at all. And I've done it much earlier as well. I think last year I seeded the carrots the same time as I put in the potatoes, which was Mother's Day. And they germinated in no time. Okay, I'm just going to give it a quick water. And here you want to use a real nice fine sprinkle. You don't want to wash that seed away at all. There is moisture in that soil. But I'm still going to wet it down a bit. Not too much. You don't want your soil to crust either. If your soil has a tendency to do that, a lot of water seems like, in my soil anyway, if it rains a lot or if I water a lot, then it seems like my soil gets a little bit crusty, and which makes it a little bit more difficult for the carrot to come through. So don't want to wash away the seed, and you don't want to saturate it. I think that's just perfect. And then I have 4 boards here, which should be enough. Oh, I have 5 boards here. These are just some sort of decorative, I think they're cedar planking that we don't use. And so you just lay it on top like that, just nice and simple. If it's warped too much, you can put something heavy on top, like a brick, like right there. You could if you wanted to. I may. I actually need another board. Which I'll have to find at some point. For now, I think I'll just leave it like this. And I'm not even going to check them unless I want to check for moisture, but I'm not even going to check them for a few days, probably a week. However, it's very easy to check. You just lift up the board, and if you see those little ferny green shoots, or even just 1 or 2, as soon as one is starting to germinate, the rest will come through quite quickly after that. So it's best to take off the boards shortly after that, or right around that time. When you see 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, when you see them starting to germinate, so around the 7-day mark, you really want to start watching them every day, maybe even twice a day, because you want to get these off pretty quick. Okay, so here we are in the bed where I was growing tulips and daffodils this spring. Also in this bed is oriental lilies at the back, some fritillaria, and what I plan to do here now to hide the dying foliage of the bulbs is to plant some new look Dusty Miller. They should get quite wide, and I'm hoping to, in this length of bed, just on the front side here, I'm hoping to put only 18. I planted an awful lot last year and in here, and it was far too many. And I learned my lesson, and I'm going to just try and space it a little bit better. In addition, I have some zinnias started that I'm going to space out throughout the bed in here. I don't think it will be, I can't remember how many I have. Perhaps there's maybe 40 like that. It's not a great deal, just enough to give it a little bit extra color. I have a weed in here called buckwheat, and it winds its way through and vines on all kinds of tall plants. So I have to be on top of it because it seeded out for me one year in here. I didn't even know it was in here. And now it is a bit of a problem. If I were to plant this bed very densely with, for example, petunias, where I couldn't see what was going on with the soil, those little buckwheat are incredibly difficult to find the root if you don't have clear access. So that's kind of what I have to strive for here. This soil is a lot of peat moss. When we first started this bed, that's what went in here, was a lot of peat moss and bagged manure and probably a few other things. I do add compost now pretty much every year, and I will this year as well, but not until the fall is when it'll get mixed in. But it's a very, very light bed. It dries out very easily. Dusty Miller are a really good candidate for this kind of condition. This is the south side of the house, and it gets full-on hot sun all day long. Dusty Miller, they loved it here last year. Absolutely loved it. So as well, you see these daffodils here. They're starting to set some seeds. Right there you can see all of the seeds. I hope that's clearing up for you there. I can't tell. Anyways, I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to go through and clip off all of the stems, the stems that have finished flowering from the daffodils as well as from the tulips. That's my first job. So of course it's important to leave the dying foliage, the leaves of tulips and daffodils, because that's what feeds the bulb for next year. So if you were to cut off all the leaves at ground level, they wouldn't have a chance to regenerate properly. Okay, I think those are trimmed. I might have missed the odd one, but that's sufficient, I think. This bed is very dry at the moment, but it's just, we haven't set up the drip yet. As a matter of fact, maybe we'll do that tomorrow. This is a kind of a difficult bed to keep watered, and drip or soaker hose is actually the best way to go about it, I've discovered. So I'm just going to lay these out first. I'm going to start in the center. And I can use the bricks as guides to see if I can get sort of even spacing. If I go a brick and a half, that seems like it would be probably about maybe 8 to 10 inches apart. And I think that should be good. And now I'm just going to pop them in where I've placed them. And I'm just going to tease the bottoms a bit because they are a little bit root bound. And then I'm just going to give them a hand water to hold them till tomorrow. And then tomorrow I'll set up this the drip. And if I'm pretty sure that's what'll happen, because I think it's supposed to be windy tomorrow. That's the problem with setting up sprinklers here, is that the wind just never stops. So there we go. 18 new look Dusty Miller. And these have a bigger, fatter leaf. And they're actually grown a lot for the cut flower industry because they grow, I guess, quite tall. Anyways, we'll see how they do there. This is my first year growing this type of Dusty Miller last year. There's my annuals getting hardened off, and the bees are just loving them. Had to come back in here. The mosquitoes are getting a little bothersome out there. It's that time of day. I just have a little bit of cleaning up to do, and I'm done for the day, so that's good. I got to putter and play outside in the yard all day today. It's a good day. Hey, thanks very much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Tell your friends, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Thanks again. See you.